Let's see if I can't get the stream to play. Are we live? Hmm. Good. Let's see if I can't get the stream to play. Okay, everybody, welcome to Joe Consumes Cinema. I am Joe, and today we have something special. Just finished out, The Last Kingdom and wanted to do something a bit different, so trying out my first live stream. And we're going to do a character tier ranking for, The Last Kingdom. Just finished it. Had the movie up for about like 2 months now. It's up on the Patreon, and yeah, this should be fun. First time live streaming, so hopefully everything goes okay. I think we're off to a decent start at least. Okay. That's doing alright. Keep that open for chat. Alright. I don't think every character is listed here, but there's a pretty good assortment. There are some that I think are missing, but we'll talk about them when we get to it. So, right off the bat, S tier, A, B, C, D. We're going to change this. Make D dead. E we're going to make into excrement. F is going to be foul. And yeah. Who even is this? I looked through some of these, and there are some, like, no-name characters. Well, they have names, it's just, they're so insignificant, literally introduced and they die off so damn quickly. But yeah, we're gonna get this started. Alright, first off, and easiest one, we gotta do Uhtred. He is S tier easily. S tier. Yeah, that one's not hard at all. Uhtred, Lord of Bebbanburg. Best title, in my opinion, has to be Uhtred the Godless. Uhtred the Godless, yeah. Excellent, excellent character. Best fighter of his generation. Constantly goes through shit, has a code, doesn't break it, even, when it's, like, impossible, but sticks to his guns, main character throughout the story, doesn't disappoint. I mean, easy, easy S tier. Alright, the rest of these, we're gonna go in order. Alright, Uncle Alfrich, I'm pretty sure, or Aelfrich. So, like, decent character to start with, rival to Uhtred, once Bebbanburg for himself, very selfish. He starts off in season 1, and then we don't see him for a long time, pops back up in season 3, and then we get a break from him for a long time, don't see him in season 4 at all. He pops up in season 5, when his son shows up, thinking, oh, son to the rescue, and then that doesn't work out for him. Very much a Ramsay Bolton and Lord Bolton style death, except, instead of the dagger, he gets hit in the heart with a crossbow, but same basic premise. Like, decent character overall, I would say. Not upper echelon, because he's not in the show all that much, but, a good villain, the jealous uncle, so I'm gonna say, like, high B tier, maybe, like, low A tier, but we'll stick him in B for now. We might go back and adjust these as we go. Okay, Queen Elswith. So, I imagine that everybody that's watched the show initially hates this character very, very much, and then as the story progresses, we start to... she starts to grow on us a little bit more, right? And, towards the end of the show, I actually really liked her. In the first, like, 3 seasons, her entire paradigm is, she talks about how she, loathes Uhtred because, he's not a Christian, and she's constantly pushing that narrative where, he's not a Christian, therefore we can't trust him, stop relying on him. But every time there's a problem, right, her first and last idea is always, look to Uhtred for help. Uhtred can help us out in this, and it's always, what can you do for me in the moment? And, I'll love you in that moment. And then as soon as that's over and the danger is past, I'll shit on you again. And she does that over and over and over again. But towards the later season, after she loses her husband, actually starts to really, open up a little bit and accept Uhtred for real this time. Probably one of my favorite scenes in the entire show is where she's just lost her daughter, who's up next in the ranking. And, she's in the chapel or whatever praying, and, she's having a kind of a crisis of faith a little bit. And, Uhtred comes to tell her that she's passed, and she says, "You don't have to say it." And she's like, "I need God now, and I don't hear him." And Uhtred puts his hand on her shoulder, and it's a nice little moment, and also, so much history between those characters that it's like, you know, that final moment of real acceptance, and after that, she's fine the rest of the series. Now, it takes a really long time to get there. That happens at the end of, or the middle of season 5. We have to wait for that moment. But, it is character growth, and the actress did a good job. So, I'm going to say A tier. Maybe, like, middle A tier. I don't know. It definitely A tier, but not, like, upper A tier, I would say. Alright, next one up. Aethelflaed. One of Uhtred's 5 love interests in the show. Very good character. Seeks Uhtred out as like an ally very early on. Very warm to him initially, even when she's, still very young and like a teenager. One of the most interesting thing that happens to her is the whole thing with her and Eric. Where the hell is he? Where's Eric? Eric. That's his brother. Where is Eric? It's the brother. Where the hell is Eric? He's got to be on here. I know I saw him earlier. Why can't I find him? Am I blind? Holy shit, is Eric not on this list? There's no way. I was looking at some of these different tier lists, and wow, that's a mistake to not have him here. You have Siegfried here, and you don't have Eric somehow. What the fuck? Am I blind as fuck? There he is. Jesus. Why the fuck didn't I see him? Anyway, their whole relationship is really cool. It's the first time, like one of the Danes is actually, quote unquote, a nice character that isn't Uhtred. And, they have a kid together. She's not, the daughter is not on here, I'm pretty sure. Way, way too minor of a character, but, it's an interesting dynamic where she's one of the first people to open up to Uhtred. She falls in love with a Dane, has a child with a Dane, marries this guy, the scumbag, and, definitely an ally throughout. I thought her death was a little bit rushed. We go into season 5 thinking that Queen Elswith is about to die because of the whole poisoning thing at the end of season 4, but then nothing comes from that. And instead, it's like this character gets cancer all of a sudden. And, the growth has gotten to a point when there's just no way past it. And, yeah, we lose her pretty early on into season 5. Yeah, season 5. And, yeah, her death scene, really cool. Dies in Uhtred's arms, and excellent character overall, I would say. Definitely A tier, but I'm going to go higher A tier. So she's definitely ahead of her mom as far as character-wise goes. Okay, next up, Aethelred. Hate this guy. Consistently a douchebag throughout. Forced marriage between Aethelred and Aethelflaed. And it's like, this guy was a total scumbag from the get-go. His death, you're supposed to feel something for him because, he does, technically die valiantly because this guy fights alongside, his queen and, Uhtred and King Edward at the battle at the beginning of season 4, not the end, the beginning, against Canute and Breda. And it's like, he gets injured in that battle, and that's what ultimately kills him. And then while he's on his deathbed, he sort of makes amends with Aethelflaed. I'll do what you want. If you want our daughter to marry someone, of your choosing, so be it. But, I was never sympathetic to him, even on his deathbed. A lot of people were telling me during the episode where he actually gets killed, how it's, so gruesome to watch, and I'm just like, I don't feel anything for this dude. He's not a bad character, it's just, definitely not one of the higher-rated villains. The actor did an okay job, I'm not complaining about that. Yeah, I'm kind of feeling B, but a low B tier for him. I mean, he gets duped, and it's his undoing. And honestly, you're watching it, and you're just like rooting for it to happen. You want it to have happened sooner than waiting until season 4 or whatever it was for him to finally die. But yeah, like okay villain, actor did an okay job, but lower tier I would say for sure. Next up, Aethelwald. This is an easy one. This is an S tier character. Okay, so I got a lot to say about this guy. First of all, the actor did a great job. Um, Initially, this guy is very much, the comic relief of the show, especially in the initial seasons. But then, he doesn't let this idea go that he should be king, even though, he's a born fuck up. He should have been passed over for Alfred. That was the smart choice. That was, the right choice, honestly, because he's so short-sighted that he only thinks about, his own gain and doesn't have this whole idea of, what's good for the people. He's very much a schemer or conniver, and you see that in season 3 with the heel turn. Thing I like best about him is he's probably the smartest villain in the entire show, and that's saying a lot because there's some really smart characters in this thing. And how he plays things is he can't match you brawn for brawn, but he uses his wits. And one of the things I really appreciate the character is he sees all the angles, and he's talking about manipulating people and telling a good story throughout. And yeah, honestly, just one of the best characters on the show. Like, I really hated the fact that we had to see him go in season 3. I mean, it makes total sense why why his downfall happened the way it did, but, it sucks seeing him go because he was a really good character and honestly my favorite villain of the show, easily. Alright, Aldhelm. Not a bad guy, a good guy, stand-up guy, loyal to Aethelflaed, looks out for her daughter. He's kind of a mid character. He's not bad. He is a good guy, but not a whole lot to write home about Aethelhelm, or Aldhelm, sorry. The Aethels are always going to give me trouble even now, but yeah, like, he's been through a lot, but like, he's always a secondary character. There's not a whole lot that happens with him. You always experience him through, the lens of other characters around him. Initially advisor to Aethelred, then he's like, you know what? This guy is such a fuck up and he really doesn't care about my people. I'm going to hook up more with, Aethelflaed, and that was the best move he made in the entire show, honestly. Yeah, I feel like he's like the measuring post between, our upper echelon S tier and, who even is this or foul characters. Like, he's smack dab right in the middle. Yeah, nothing else to say about him, honestly. Okay, Alfred, easiest one to rank. S tier. I put him ahead of Aethelwald, but I don't believe he's better than Uhtred. He is a great character. He's one of the top 3 characters in the show. In fact, I think I'm going to say he's second best character in the show, honestly. Maybe Brida's third best, but, we'll get to that eventually. So, the thing I like about him is he's the one that takes the chance, right, on Uhtred, and it's kind of like, this clever manipulation. As Leofric said, the bastard thinks. One of the most, not conniving, or manipulative, but actually sees all the angles and thinks things through, doesn't rush into a fight, not a coward at all. He will fight. He has fought multiple times throughout the show. And just a great character because of his relationship with Uhtred. It's this love-hate thing between these two. He initially forces Uhtred into service, basically makes him an offer he literally cannot refuse, and makes him subservient to him. And gradually, over time, they sort of become friends almost, even though, it's very much, boss worker type mentality between these two. That scene where Alfred is, nearing the end of his life and they sit down and talk and, have a drink with one another is the best scene in the entire show, in my opinion. There's a lot of really good scenes in this show, but, like, I don't know, just the relationship and the fact that he's always having this give and take with Uhtred where he sees, from his perspective, the practicality of having him around, but he grapples with that whole thing where, he's very much a Christian, devout, one of the most devout people in the entire show, and he can't reconcile the fact that Uhtred, is a Dane at heart, really, even though born a Saxon, but, he just can't reconcile the fact that he doesn't believe in his god, and it's something that bothers him throughout the entire series, and he really only makes peace with it when he's nearing the end of his life, and you can kind of argue that that is a bit of a manipulation because the main thing he wants at that point is for Uhtred to be around, to be an advisor to his son Edward, who he knows is going to need his help. There's just no getting around that fact. Uhtred is so goddamn useful that he'll make the Christians, compromise, which is insane if you think about it, anything about, British history. And yeah, like, it's one of the coolest relationships in the entire show. Excellent character, great scenes. Yeah, like, that's an easy fucking S tier. He's second best in the show, hands down. Who the hell is this? This is some priest from season 3, I want to say. I want to say he was with, where's the other guy? This dude, this douchebag. The other, like, evil priest. Not quite that bad. I can't remember if this is the guy that shows up asking Alfred for help because of Saint Cuthbert or whatever the hell, their saint, we need to unite these relics. I can't remember if he's in season 2 at the beginning or if he's the dude in season 3. I want to tie him with this guy, but he might not be related to him. I can't remember. I don't even remember his name. He's not an important character. He has like 2 or 3 scenes, so we're going to put this in who even is this, because, somebody let me know if they know his name. I have no idea who the hell that is offhand. Put a gun to my head, I'm not going to know. Next up, easy one. Father Beorka, S tier. And honestly, right where he is right now is where I would rank him. So, again, great relationship with Uhtred. Great relationship with the king, too. Antagonistic relationship with Aethelwald, especially, after what he does to Tora. So another one of those characters that's struggling, we constantly see him through the lens of Uhtred, and he's the one who initially says, hey, there's this guy, he might be of use to us, and, you should really look into him, because he's a great warrior, and I knew him when he was a kid, I baptized him, and yeah, he could be a real big help, and he's constantly, sticking up for Uhtred, even though, it gets him in trouble a lot, and eventually it gets to the point where he's isolated and even just, distant from his own people by the end, because first off, he marries a Dane, Tura. Where the hell is she? There she is. Yeah, they have a great relationship at the start because, when we first see her as an adult, she's captured and, has been raped and all this stuff, and it's like, the first, like, nice moment that she has is when he shows up and, just wants to talk with her, kind of comfort her a little bit. And then, a little bit down the line, they end up marrying, and it's a very nice thing until she burns to death. I mean, this is easily one of the worst deaths in the show. A lot of bad people get what's coming to them, but also a lot of good people, go down tragically, and this is probably the worst, honestly. But yeah, there's this sort of thing with him where, he's a priest, so very much a Christian, holds those beliefs, but he marries a Dane, and, it creates this rift between him and his people. And after what happens with his wife, he's at a point where he doesn't want anything to do with them anymore, which is one of the reasons why he goes with Uhtred to try and take back the keep of Bebbanburg. And it's just like, he's at a point in his life where there's nothing for him anymore. His wife has died. One last hurrah with his boy, and then, he goes out tragically. Saves Uhtred's life, or was it Uhtred or was it young Uhtred? I think it was young Uhtred. He gets in the way of that bolt that's headed for young Uhtred, I'm pretty sure. One last sacrifice, one last good deed for the guy. And then, his loss fucks Uhtred up for a while. He's pretty much like, I am nothing anymore, fuck destiny, this is it. I'm not even a warrior anymore. Like, that's how bad he takes it when he loses this guy. So, Yeah, great character. I want to say, like, I think I'm going to keep him at number 4. Or, well, actually, this is going to get shifted, but right now where he is quite good. Um, I don't like him quite as much as Aethelwald, but great character, undoubtedly S tier. All right. Um, Another no name. So I actually know who this guy is. This is the dude that fights Father Pulik. Where is he? Father Pulik. Season 3. The brothers Siegfried and Eric, have Father Pulik captured, and then Father Pulik starts talking shit, to kind of goad them into giving him a chance. And Uhtred says, "Why not give him a chance to fight? It might be amusing." And he knows, just based on the way he's acting, because he's defiant, and he's like, just kill me and get it over with. And then they put him up against this dude, thinking, he's going to get slaughtered. This, red shirt, no name idiot, really cocky. He's a Briton. Before he was a priest, he was a soldier. He knows how to fight. So this moron, goes in there thinking it's going to be easy, and he just chops him up to pieces. And then, best part is, he drops that, he has his arms out like in a cross like this, and he drops the sword after he's dusted up this guy. This guy doesn't even get killed by him, he just gets wounded, and then, Siegfried, who's pissed off at the moment, just has him killed. So, who the hell is it even this? And, very much, he's just a red shirt. Forget him, doesn't matter. Alright, next up, Brita. Another easy S tier. And number 3. So this character, again, another conflicted relationship with Uhtred. Starts off, they're almost like brother and sister being raised together, and they fall in love, and, they almost have a child together, and they lose that child because she needs to have this vision. She takes that mushroom plant or whatever in order to have the vision, and, that costs them the child. After that, she thinks she can't have children anymore. This love-hate relationship that goes throughout the show, where she can't wrap her head around Uhtred's need to reconcile with the Saxons. She's very much a Dane through and through, is hostile towards them in the very beginning. Kind of towards the middle season, cooperates a little bit, but it's not by choice. Her position is very weak initially in the show, and it doesn't get strong until she meets up with Ragnar the Younger. Where the hell is he? Can never find them quickly. There he is. And falls in love with him, after his death. I mean, hooks up with Canute just by happenstance. She's literally like, I can't make it alone as a woman in the Danish world. I need somebody around me, and, he's here. Like, that's literally it. That's their relationship and what it's built on, which makes it, all the more easy when she learns about his part in betraying, Ragna. Makes it so easy for her to just walk up and kill him like it's nothing. Move on, doesn't weep for him at all. It's... But, yeah, trying to think, there's a lot more to say about her, for sure. Her whole arc where after she gets imprisoned by, what is it, not the Britons, King Hal, I can't remember the name of his fucking people. Well, the Welsh. After she gets imprisoned by the Welsh, think things can't get are never going to go good for her again. Then Sigtryggr shows up, frees her, and she starts back on her warpath. Gets betrayed by Sigtryggr because he's all about compromise and finding a new path. Comes back in season 5, with a vengeance. Has a daughter at that point who is I want to say maybe 8 or 9 years old at that point. Is a seer, puts her to full use, and goes about trying to get revenge. So I do want to talk about this. Season 5, her storyline is it starts off, she's on the warpath, she wants revenge. Things go wrong for her. Major setback. She has that existential crisis after losing her daughter. And then it's kind of are we going to try and convert her? Because her whole situation with, after the death of her daughter and Father Pulik, um, it just it just felt off. It felt like it didn't belong, honestly. Um, yeah, they were all over the place with her storyline in season 5. And even though, she has one of the best scenes in the entire show between her and Uhtred, where, they're finally just going to settle this, she, at that point, has castrated Uhtred the Younger, and Uhtred is on the warpath, is finally at a point in his mind where, he can kill her, and comes really close to doing it. And then, they have that great scene where she's on her knees saying, there's no way back for me. And he says, I will help you. Literally lifts her up, and, they embrace, touch foreheads. And then, great moment. And then it's immediately interrupted by Stura and her arrow. Actually, Citrigar's bow and the arrow, put through her by Stura. A little bit of revenge right there, but, that scene was just so well done because as they're fighting, it's constantly going back and forth between memories of them, when they were younger and in love, and, the conflict between the two of them, all their history back and forth, back and forth. And just like one of the best scenes in the show, honestly, it's really close in my mind to being better than the scene between Uhtred and Alfred, where, they're saying their goodbyes one last time. But, like, this is a close second for me, in my opinion. Um, it's really like one of the perfect send-off moments for a character. Like, I was at a point where in season 5 when dealing with her, I was just like, you know what? We need to kill her off. And then they gave me that scene. It's like, wow. Now I regret saying that. But yeah, like, definitely S tier character. Number 3, hard number 3 in my opinion. 1, 2, 3. These might change a little bit. Probably not him too much, but yeah. Great character. Again, classic theme throughout the show, conflicted relationship with Uhtred. A lot of characters have a conflicted relationship with Uhtred, but yeah, like, definitely S tier for sure. Hard 3, I think. Alright, another no-name dude. I know who this is. When Mercia comes to negotiate with Alfred, and, they're about to organize the marriage between Aethelflaed and what's going to be Aethelred, this is the king of Mercia, I'm pretty sure at that time. And, this guy is arguing with Alfred because he wants men, and Alfred is just keep insisting on this marriage that will, create this alliance, and then we'll deal with that. And he gets so worked up that he actually gives himself a heart attack. Aethelwald makes a joke when this guy croaks. Don't know his name. Not a great character. He has, like, literally 10 minutes of screen time. Actor did an okay job, but, who even is this, honestly? He doesn't matter. I don't know if he's I don't know if he's Aethelred's dad, or he's just, like, some Mercian High Lord that got up to king, and then after that they have, like, a Witten from his death, and that's how Aethelred gets the spot. He might not be even related to Aethelred, I don't know. But yeah, who even is this? Klappa. This is definitely a C tier character. So, Uhtred has a lot of, quote-unquote merry men throughout the seasons. It's not until we get to Finan and Sihtric that, for the most part, the crew, stays the same throughout. He has a lot of people that come by his side and, join up with him and fight alongside him that are, super loyal, but they tend not to stick around too much. I think this guy got, like, a season. He showed up in either the beginning of season 3 or near the end of season 2 as just, like, a fighter. And then once Uhtred has his own keep, he goes with him there. He's loyal throughout, but we lose him fighting against the brothers, I'm pretty sure. I don't think he's better than Aldhelm. Not a bad character. Just kind of like a big muscle dude. Yeah. Not quite like red shirt territory, but, brought in and then leaves relatively quickly. Like, I think he had maybe a season where he was on screen and that was it. Doesn't have any lines, just does a lot of fighting, honestly. Canute. This one's a bit tough. So, not the greatest character, not the worst. I kind of want to. This is definitely a B or C. Um, he starts off when he's introduced as Ragnar the Younger's cousin, right? And you can tell he doesn't like Uhtred from the get go. Um, a bit conniving. He does set Ragnar the Younger up for murder, allowing him to get with Brita and also, take control of the Danes. Um, I'm gonna go high C tier. Right now, he's the best of the C characters. So his whole thing where he betrays, his cousin, using Aethelwald of all people, who honestly that was the most shocking thing is he actually kills Ragnar the Younger, and like this should never ever happen, right? But he sneaks into his tent and stabs him multiple times. Great scene, gruesome as hell, but yeah, this guy should never lose to this dude. But because of he's conniving and he's smart and he uses what he has available to him and he's willing to do like the uncouth dirty deeds to get where he needs to be. This guy actually killed this dude. So yeah, um, yeah, strong C tier, middling, but yeah, upper echelon of the C's thus far. Liked when he got killed by Brita. Probably the best moment from him, in my opinion. His reign as the quote unquote power of the Danes, uh, very short lived. I want to say after Ragnar gets killed, he is in control for maybe 3 or 4 episodes before you know the whole thing at the beginning of season 4, the storyline where they sell the bill of goods to Aethelred, getting him to drive his to take his men out to reclaim some lands or something. They literally think that that the Danes went to Ireland or something, and perfect opportunity for him to sack the capital of Mercia. And that's kind of the high point. After that, he loses his kids to Heston loses his kids to Uhtred. Then he thinks they're dead. They're not dead. He gets easily goaded into fighting Uhtred all out. There's that great battle where they carve. They have that ravine right in the middle of the battlefield, and they cover it up with tree branches and shit. And these guys charge headlong, fall through that thing, and get completely decimated. He one-on-ones Uhtred, confesses like an idiot. Then Brita knows what's up. He's on his knees, and then she finishes him off. Doesn't think or mention him ever again. Like I said, this is definitely a relationship of convenience between these two. She's just like, I can't be alone in the world as a woman. Like, I need somebody, and this guy's here. And it's like, okay, whatever. So, yeah, he really undersells his potential, I think. Yeah, just kind of like your typical Dane, except he's a little bit more sneaky and conniving, willing to sell out other Danes to get what he wants. And yeah, it doesn't go well for him at all. But next up. Okay, so this priest guy, this has to be, of all the who even is this characters we have here, he's the most memorable. And I feel like I actually should know his name. So I'm not even going to put him in the who even is this category. I'm going to put him in the foul category. So this guy hates Uhtred from the jump, not surprising. But he does so much horrendous shit on the way to get there. He tricks, well, not really tricks. He manipulates this guy, Gisela's brother, name I can't remember. This guy gets rescued in season 3 or the beginning of or season 2, or no, beginning of season 3, I want to say. Initially, this guy and Uhtred are like buddy buddy. He's like terrified of Uhtred because he's not a great warrior and he doesn't inspire his men like Uhtred can, and he feels that Uhtred is a threat. This guy plays on that, notion and makes perfect use of, that insecurity to get him to do something really stupid when he betrays Uhtred. That's how Uhtred gets sent into slavery. He's rowing on that ship for something like a year or more into like Iceland and places like in the far out, and it's like This scumbag just like has the biggest fucking mouth, considering the fact that he cannot fight at all. One of the most satisfying deaths for sure. He force marries Gisela to uh, Aelfric, who isn't even present at the time, and Uhtred just doesn't waste any time, kills a priest, and it's like, oh, all the characters are in shock, and it's like, come on, guys, like, Uhtred should not get in trouble for that shit. This guy's a total scumbag. He doesn't give a fuck, like, he doesn't give a fuck about Christendom, honestly. He's just very much about, whatever he thinks is best for him more than anything. Yeah, don't know his name, but I'm not putting him in this category because he is definitely foul. Satisfying death. I love watching him go. Okay, Lord Uhtred, the initial one. I know this character. I know this actor from Succession. Forget his name, but he does a really good job for a character that literally lasts an episode. So, Uhtred when he's a kid, this is his dad, and the Danes show up. He's like one of the smart people that realizes that something's off in the battle as it's getting set up. The Danes, Ragnar the Elder lures these people in and then sets a really cool trap. And he's one of the people that's like, this doesn't feel right. Why are they retreating like they are? And it's a setup. It's I haven't watched it in so long. I forget how it plays out exactly. I just remember this guy picks up on it and he gets ignored by the other people. They, get massacred, and, Uhtred has to watch his father die. And then the man who did it becomes his new dad, and it makes the setup for, like, what's going to happen to Uhtred all the better, because this whole idea of him being conflicted throughout is really established quite well early on. Loses his dad, who he's not very close to. He's very mean to Uhtred, honestly. But he's still his dad. And watching him die scars him. And then the guy that did it is the one that raises him. And he's actually really nice to Uhtred. And, eventually they get to a point where they're very much father and son. And, Uhtred has that history that passed to Bebbanburg through him. But I've always felt personally that Uhtred was way more of a Dane than he ever was a Saxon. His connection to Saxony is very much just political convenience, honestly. His appeal to Saxons is so small. His appeal to Danes is so strong. So even though, they very much play up this idea of, Uhtred, I'm born a Saxon, raised a Dane, the raising part is way stronger than the being born part, because this is just a familial connection that gets literally cut from him when he's like 8 or 9 years old. And then he goes on, lives the rest of his life, becomes a man. He's like 20 or 21 by the time we lose him. Who he considers his real father watches him burn. So another father that Uhtred watches, another father that, Uhtred has to see go. And it's like, man, early setup early on. He's a good character. I'm going to put him B. I want to say... I don't know. It's just because of the fact that, he doesn't have all that much screen time. Good character, but he's literally in one episode, so I don't feel justified putting him higher than Aelfric, who, his appearances are sporadic, but he does so much more, and yeah, I think I can't justify putting him ahead of him. I can have Aethelred, because fuck Aethelred. Okay, another no-name. So this dude is actually a king. When we see him, he's in front of Guthrum and Abba, right? And, they're kind of taunting him. He's telling this story about one of these apostles, or whatever the hell it was. Not apostles, but, these religious figures that they worship, like Saint Cuthbert, one of the saints or whatever, and how it took so long for this one guy to die. They, like, cut off his hands and his legs and all this stuff. And Abba... Where the hell's Abba? Abba and Guthrum... Where's Guthrum? There's Guthrum. Abba and Guthrum are like, let's play a game with this guy. If you can survive these arrows, we'll we'll leave, or something to that effect. And he's like, well, wait a minute. He's like talking about his faith and how it's unquestionable, undeniable. God gives me strength, gives me power, all this nonsense. And then he gets chopped to bits, gets some arrows pumped into him, and then I think this is like an axe in his skull, or he might be on a spike or something. But yet, he's actually a king, and I know that because I looked that up when I didn't recognize who the hell this was. Still forget his name. I looked up his name and I already forgot it, so he's not anything important. But his death is funny. So, like, his death is funny, catapults him to better than all these others idiots. Like, this guy's death is funny, so actually he should be more like here. Stupid death. Uh, who the hell knows what happens to him? Aethelwald laughs at him when he literally croaks out. And yeah, he's so smug about his religion, and then, the Danes play a little game with him, and he doesn't last very long. He's got maybe 10 minutes of screen time, too, if that. Literally looked up his name last night. I was reviewing character names just so I wouldn't mess things up. And I already forget his name, because it doesn't matter, because he literally lives like 10 minutes. Alright, Edward. This is going to be an A-tier character. He might be on the cusp of S-tier, but I think he's like high A-tier. In fact, he might be the best of the A-tier. So, I like best about him is the fact that, he has a storyline even when he's a newborn infant. If you remember, when Alfred and Queen Elsbeth are sort of on the run, they get kicked out of Wessex. What the hell is the capital? Winchester. They get kicked out of Winchester by the Danes. Guthrum lays a little surprise trap, and they have to evacuate. And even when he's a baby, he has a storyline, right? So he's born, and he's like sickly, kind of like his dad. And Queen Iseult is actually the one that saves his life. Where is she? Where is Queen Iseult? She's definitely on here. There she is. Yeah. What's cool about this is the first time Queen Elsbeth has to compromise because her son is dying. Alfred is like, look, we gotta hand our kid over to this witch. There's no other choice. And she can't wrap her head around the fact that this is sacrilegious. I can't be a part of this. And she's terrified throughout. Queen Iseult, Dane using her sorcerer or whatever, saves Edward's life, and in doing so, Edward loses his son. Where's Mildred? Right there. That's the son that Uhtred loses because of the sacrifice that Uhtred forces Queen Iseult to make. There's a price to pay for the magic that she does, and it's like someone, some innocent child somewhere else will lose their life because of what I'm doing. And he's like, listen, we got to take that chance. And sure enough, it's Uhtred's son, his firstborn son, who he loses tragically. First moment I cried on the show was when Uhtred is over his son's grave after having finally returned. At that point, Mildred hates him at that point, understandable. Left him alone, and that happened. Shows up with this random woman. I mean, yeah, like their relationship was never going to last. But yeah, like even in the very beginning, this guy has a storyline, and then he starts to grow up. We get that time skip, I believe, between season 3. Yeah, between season 3 and season 2, first time skip. He all of a sudden goes from, an infant to a teenager. And we first see him, training. Uhtred shows him what's what. Keep practicing, kid. You're going to need it. He doesn't really make a splash until the end of season 3 when Uhtred and his men are fighting Heston. They're trying to acquire Skade, right? And they're surrounded because that's part of the plan. These Edward and Alfred are with their men along the tree line, Uhtred's men are getting chopped up, and he's like, "We got to go in, we got to go in," and Alfred is like purposefully taking his time, making his son panic a little bit, because what he wants from his son is to finally like step up and take the initiative more, because he's so like he's way too cautious, and he knows that for him to finally step up and take action, he's going to be have to be forced in a place where he's uncomfortable, and he's watching Uhtred lose his men all around him. He's like, we got to attack, and finally he's like, what are you going to do, boy? Are you going to stand there and bleat, or are you going to do something? And finally, he screams out for the attack, and then as soon as his son does that, Alfred gives the word, and they charge in. First time killing men, does a really good job. He's a decent fighter, and yeah, like one of the cool things about him is you get to see his progression, even from him being a newborn. He has a storyline, so that's really cool with him. Um, Season 4, he's finally picked up the crown. He feels throughout that he's not worthy. And initially, it's like a sense of am I going to be as good of a king as my father? And then when he surpasses that hurdle throughout the course of Season 4, the next hurdle for him is he going to be the man to create this united England? Is he worthy of that? And initially he's very doubtful. You see the hesitancy in Season 5. He finally overcomes that hurdle, and this is what directly leads to Uhtred retaking Bebbanburg. Finally get Lord Uhtred of Bebbanburg because of him. And it's like throughout throughout his reign, he's shown himself to be ruthless at times, and it kind of is a little bit of self-sabotage. Now, I think when he wastes the Eldermen, the Mercian Eldermen, it's honestly like his best scene in the show, because he deals with these guys right after Aethelred dies, and there's that whole Witten succession. Eventually, his sister gets named, and he hates the Eldermen of Mercia specifically because they are such a pain in his ass that by the time Aethelflaed passes, and it's like we got to have another one of these stupid Wittens, he's just like done with this shit. And then he learns what Lord Aethelhelm has done, where he bribes all the Mercian Eldermen who are gonna pick some. They're gonna pick his son, who's a stooge of Lord Aethelhelm, and it's just like, you know what? I'm not dealing with these pieces of shit anymore. I have evidence of corruption. These guys are going bye-bye. Like, that's one of his strongest scenes, but at the same time, that level of, ruthlessness from him makes it so, where they're at this crowning achievement moment where Uhtred is about to be Lord, and he's about to swear fealty towards King Edward, and, they're going to take that one step closer to that dream of a united England. And that's where Uhtred backs off, because he's been so callous with how he deals with the Danes, and also even people that just aren't from Wessex. He's pretty ruthless with the Mercians too. He sees his power there. So that, I don't know, it's this weird kind of conflict where I feel he was justified in a lot of his actions, but because he was so heartless about it at times, it really like makes it off-putting to the point where Uhtred kind of doesn't fully trust him. And that leads up to that scene where he's like, I've made a deal with the King of Scotland. We're not going to be a part of England, at least not yet. Eventually that will happen. Don't worry, eventually it will happen. It's just not going to happen anytime soon, because there's something about the way you've decided to do things that I can't fully trust you with the health and prosperity of my people. And yeah, it's this honestly, in the moment when I saw that happen, I was just like, why? Like, it was kind of a little bit disappointing, even though the finale for Season 5 and the show was great. I'm also not a fan of the fact that he wasn't in the movie and just gets killed off screen. I didn't like that at all. I thought that could have been handled a little bit better with him. He deserved more, honestly. But yeah, he's definitely high A tier. He might be the best of A tier, but we're going to have to keep going through this. Wow, we're already like almost an hour in. Okay, Eric. Brothers Eric and Siegfried. definitely some of the cooler Danish lords. The new threat that popped up. Um, he gets busy with Aethelflaed. They have a daughter that looks a lot like him. Blonde hair and also just the eyes. Good casting on the show's part. But another cool character, one of these Danes who's a little bit conflicted. He's very much a lord. He loves the lifestyle, and he doesn't compromise on it. But at the same time, once he falls in love with her, he's like, maybe there's a third way, and that's kind of interesting because he's almost like in a weird way like the prototype Sigtryggr, where what the hell's Sigtryggr? Sigtryggr. Where's Sigtryggr? You gotta have Sigtryggr on this list, bro. They don't have Sigtryggr on this list. What in the fuck? Is this like a limited season? No. Some of these characters come in later. That's unjustifiably bad. Holy shit. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, he's kind of like the prototype Sigtryggr, in where, Sigtryggr is not just about, constant war and pillaging. He wants to settle down. He wants land of his own to cultivate. He wants to, sow roots, build a family, build a village, all this type of stuff. Like expand, actually grow, have something more sustainable for once. And once he falls in love with Aethelflaed, he's at a point where, he sees that as an actual option now. And, that's what causes him to betray his brother. Really tragic between these two. He's very much, your prototype Dane. Just war and pillage is all he looks for. And when he sees that his brother has betrayed them and, sown the division that's going to bring down his entire army, they mass probably one of the largest armies in the entire show. When they take London, that was really, really cool from them. Yeah, he's definitely... He's an A-tier character. I think he's one of the lower A-tier characters. Because initially really cool, has that minor setback, but then they come back with that huge-ass army. He takes London, for Christ's sake. That's gotta account for a lot right there. Yeah, lower to mid-tier A. We'll keep him on lower for now. I might rearrange this. Finan. So, at this point, when Uhtred starts to get men, for the most part, they tend to stick around. Before that, the trend was, each season had a guy that, teamed up with Uhtred, and it was like, this is my go-to, right hand, my swordsman, and at some point in this season, he's going to die. Finan, not the case. Uhtred first meets Finan when they are enslaved by this dude, whose name I forget. They're rowing on the ship, and, horrible existence. He's the one that tries to keep Uhtred's spirit up, throughout the worst of it when they're enslaved, but also throughout the entire course of the rest of the show, where Uhtred has these setbacks, and he's always the one that tries to, bring him back from it, coach him in a way. His best scene, in my opinion, is right after they lose Father Beorhca, and, he's trying to encourage Uhtred, saying that we go on, like, the loss is painful, and we'll mourn him, but, we're going to go on, you're going to get the keep back, you just need to keep plugging along. And, like, that's honestly the best scene from him. Other than that, the actor does a decent job. Good fighter throughout the show. Little bit enigmatic, little flair from the performance, because he's like one of the only Irish characters in the show. So that's pretty cool. That's what he has going for him, honestly. I'm gonna say B tier, but I'm gonna give him one of the higher B tier spots, just because, like, he's kind of like Uhtred's cheerleader throughout the show, honestly. And, someone good to rely on the team, but not a whole lot going on with him. He gets a wife later on. We lose her in the movie. Uh, yeah, not a whole lot to say about. I do like the character, but yeah, like B tier, higher B tier. Give me a sec. Jeez, I don't normally talk this much. Oh, god damn. Yeah, higher B tier. Finnan's a good dude. Definitely want strong right hand by your side. All right. This fucking dude. Who even is this? So, season 3, when they are taking that keep that Kiatin has. Where the hell's Kiatin? Uh, Kiatin. They take Kiatin's keep. There's Kiatin. This dude is like initially scared because Uhtred plays that trick where he dresses up in that costume or whatever. What the hell? He puts like a curse on all the people in the keep, and he collects like the skulls of the dead men that these guys sent out as like foragers or front exploration troops or whatever. I forget the term, but yeah, this dude initially buys into the hocus pocus. Uh, he gets killed pretty early on when they take the keep. That's a pretty cool moment because it's the point where Ragnar finally gets revenge for Kiatin and Sven, who betray Ragnar the Elder, and burn down his keep, set him on fire. This guy has one of the coolest deaths in the show, honestly, where he's on fire, swinging his sword at everybody, and yeah, like that leads to this guy, has a small part to play in one of the coolest moments where uh, Ragnar the Younger gets revenge for his father, killing him, and he just like he goes ape shit with his sword and just butchers the shit out of him. Yeah. Um, is it even worth to rank who even is this within the who even is this? Is he better than this dude? Maybe. Is he better than this dude? Probably. He's I don't know. I kind of feel like this category almost doesn't matter. The ranking within the ranking. Uh, you know what? Fuck this dude. There. I think I like that better. This guy at least dies funny. This guy dies really funny. Um, Arrogant, but at least he swings a fucking sword. I think he swings his sword, but it doesn't go very well. And yeah, whatever. And whoever. Next up, Lady Gisela. So this is going to be A tier. Out of all, the romantic flings that Uhtred has, this, in my opinion, is the best one. This is the one that, honestly, when we lose her, it sucks the most. I think losing her hurt even more than losing her, in terms of how Uhtred viewed it, because this one has just been nothing but a positive relationship from the start. Uhtred rescues her brother, whose name I still forget, and very early on, they're smitten with one another. And then she gives him like 3 kids or 2 kids, Stura and Uhtred the Younger. And each of those kids has their own personality. They actually grow up to do something in the show. And yeah, like I always liked her because she was very reasonable. And we lose her. How the hell did we lose her? What season? 3 or 4? 3. The end of 3. How the hell does she die again? No, childbirth. Childbirth. The third son, who pops up at the end of at the finale of season 5 randomly, with Hild, and they're like, I think this guy, this lord, can tell you a lot about your father, and it's Uhtred's son, and that's the joke at the end of the finale. But yeah, she dies in childbirth, and it's so tragic because Uhtred's holding his newborn, and he's crying like one of the few times he cries like that. And yeah, man, just a heartbreaking scene, and it sucked losing her because we lose her, she gets buried, right? And then the fucking Christians are like, hey, this Dane doesn't belong in the graveyard of, this Christian graveyard. And that starts this whole bullshit that gets Uhtred in trouble. Even though that one guy, that one priest who was like crippled was talking smack, and Uhtred like slaps him like a nothing backhand, and in doing that, he kills him. Like one of the dumbest deaths in the show. This guy falls like 3 inches, and that's it. And it's like it's a setup by Aethelwald of all people. He his schemes and his conniving are some of the best in the show. He knows that this is a very sore soft spot for Uhtred, and using a proxy, he sets up a chain of events that really gets Uhtred in trouble. Almost costs him everything, honestly. It's only by the skin of his teeth that he honestly comes back from that, and it's only again because Alfred needs something. So yeah, losing her sucked, and out of all the love interests, this is the death that I think hurt the most, even more than Brita. And I know that's going to be a controversial take, but yeah, I really think because this relationship was just nothing but positive for Uhtred throughout the entire time, and if she hadn't died, they'd still be together. Like, there's no, even this doesn't come close in my opinion, because this is so conflicted that this is pure, and this is the best of all the relationships. This is better than hers, honestly. But as a character within the A tier, better than him, maybe better than her. I don't think better than Edward. The thing is, she doesn't do a whole lot, so should I justify? It's kind of a gray area. I'm gonna go better than Eric. Better than Eric, not better than Queen Elswith or Aethelflaed. Even though I think this is the best of, out of all 5 relationships that Uhtred has had on the show, this is the best of them. But we're talking, character here, and does way more, does way more, does way more. Yeah, like, I'm kind of debating whether or not I should swap these back. I'll leave it for now. I'll revisit it. Okay, Lady Gisela's brother. I can't remember his goddamn name. um, so this guy's entire storyline is he's a prisoner. Uhtred rescues him, right? And then, because of his own insecurities, he fucks up, any hope that he has of actually becoming a king, like a real king. In fact, I don't think this guy dies in the show. I think he just becomes so insignificant that they just never revisit him ever again. Like, that's the messed up part of this character, is this guy's a king, and, it doesn't matter. So, like, where do you put this idiot? You know what? This is going to be pretty ironic, but I'm going to put him in the dead category. He's not even dead. I'm pretty sure he doesn't die. Like, we last see him, Uhtred comes back and almost kills him, but then doesn't because, the sister and, him caring for her so much. But, like, man, this guy might as well be dead. This guy's alive, but he's so insignificant that he might as well be dead. Like, his storyline just, ugh. He's almost, like, the only thing worse than his storyline is, Wulfgar's storyline, Edith's brother. Like, that storyline sucks so much. But, yeah, I'm gonna try and speed these up a little bit, because we're already an hour in. I thought this would take about an hour, but we need to rapid fire a little bit more. Okay, Guthrum. A little bit controversial. I'm gonna put him in C tier. This is one of the few Danish lords that converts to Christianity, and that, in my opinion, is a huge negative. This guy's cool in the beginning. I like him a lot. He's right there with Abba, torturing this dude, who's not a priest. He's actually a king. And he gets off on, torturing Christians and, showing them, hey, your God ain't coming to rescue you. And it's like a source of amusement in the early seasons. But then this dude loses a fight, and then the dumbest rationale, like, in the entire show, and honestly, in my opinion, is he's just like, oh, like, they keep fighting. They don't give up or whatever. And then he's like, wow, they're God. And, like, and then he converts. Like, honestly, one of the most disappointing things, because this was a really good character. And then, like, he still exists in the show, but he's so beaten down and insignificant at that point that every once in a while his name will pop up, but all the other Danes don't respect him. He has no real authority. He can't control his own people at a certain point. So yeah, this guy's lower C tier, but he should honestly be an A tier. But he fucks it up by converting to Christianity. So yeah. Heston. Um B. So throughout the show, right? This guy is very much a toady. He's not a good fighter. He's not very cunning. He does manipulate and, lie to people successfully throughout, much of the course of the show. But the thing about him is I basically wanted him to die ever since I saw him on screen, right? And we get all the way through season 4, and I'm like, come on, we got to get, Heston's death. He should have died at the end of season 3 in that big fight. He and Canute should have died in that fight. But instead, they keep him around. He becomes insignificant after Canute's forces are defeated. He becomes, like, not even a Danish lord, but a Danish traitor. And, like, that's his whole thing, is he's just trying to make money. And, then season 5, he pops back up because Uhtred needs him to go in the keep of Bebbanburg, pretend to be shipwrecked or whatever, and see what he can find out. See if he can find Aethelflaed's daughter, whose name I forget. But yeah, he does one act of kindness and gets killed for it. And it's like, I really wish he just would have died in the fighting at the end of season 3. That would have been a way more appropriate place for him to, lose his life. Instead, he gets strung along. He has one, quote unquote redeeming moment at the end of season 5 where he doesn't betray Uhtred. Surprisingly, it surprised the shit out of me. And then, what is it? In the movie, we see that he's in the feasting halls, which, honestly, this guy dies without a sword in his hand, so why the hell is he in the feasting halls? He has one redeeming moment, and he's in the feasting halls of Valhalla? I don't know. B, lower B tier character, because, honestly, 90% of the time that he's on screen, I'm just, like, like wishing actively that he would have died, and he just doesn't. Yeah, lower B, lower B. Halig. So, one of Uhtred's initial right-hand men, he stands up with Uhtred when Uhtred gets put in literal chains, put into slavery. And he's like, no, I'm going with him. I'm staying loyal. And he's like, shut up. Keep your mouth shut. Don't listen to him. Don't. And then he gets caught up in it with Uhtred. He has one of the worst deaths in the show. They try to escape. They fail. They get in that canoe or whatever, and they're firing arrows at them, chasing them down with dogs. And this guy takes like an arrow in the leg, and they get him in the little canoe and try and, push the thing, but there's no chance. They show up and, re-enslave them. And they tie this dude to the mast like this, and, he keeps his head above water for as long as he can, but, they're encouraged to row as hard as they can in order to kill him faster, to make his suffering less. And yeah, stand-up guy, loyal to Uhtred, but unfortunately he falls in the category of, this season's Uhtred right-hand man who dies. Again, it's not until we get to Finan and Sihtric that, Uhtred's men tend to stick around a little bit longer. Until that point, each season he has somebody that's, next to him that's a stand-up guy that helps him out, and then ultimately dies for, being an ally to Uhtred. And it just keeps happening, unfortunately. He's a solid character. I'm going to put him at B. And I'm going to put him... I'm going to put him in the middle. He's not as good as Finan. He's not as good as Sihtric. But he has a really cool death. He's a stand-up guy, very loyal to Uhtred. Yeah, like right about here, I think is good. I think Aelfric is a little bit more deserving because he sticks around a little bit longer. Has way more lines than him. The strongest point in his favor is the fact that he has one of the coolest deaths. Tragic and brutal for Uhtred to experience because he's the one that actually is doing the rowing, that's killing his friend. But he has to do it in order to end his suffering. So yeah, middle tier of B makes sense. Hild, I'm gonna go C tier with this, and I'm gonna go. Like, the thing that disappoints with this character is the fact that she starts off, she's a nun. She hooks up with Uhtred, and she slowly, there's a point where she has to fight, and she kills somebody, and she's like, you know what? Maybe I should train. And that's really cool, because it's kind of like the first point in the show where we have, like, a warrior priestess, which I really liked. And, she initially, trains and starts getting good, but then at some point, she puts the sword down and says, I can't do this anymore. And, picks back up the holy book. And that's a downgrade in my opinion. I wish they would have explored this idea of warrior priestess who's, conflicted because she's also very religious. She is a nun. Instead, they just take out the warrior priestess part and just make her a nun, which that's a downgrade. I like the character and all. It's just, I'm not a big fan of how they wrote her in the second half. Her first half is pretty strong, but that second half is way too weak. Yeah, honestly, I'd like her more if she just, became one of the boys and, kept that sword in her hand throughout and just did a lot of fighting. That would have been better, in my opinion. No idea who the hell this is. So some priest, I think the Danes took over some city, some Saxon city, right? And this guy finally has enough of the Dane shit, and he revolts, and he's actually successful in it. And then Uhtred shows up, and they're like, hey, we need to get with Alfred. I'm pretty sure this is actually one of the cooler priests, honestly, because this guy actually does some fighting, and he kills a bunch of Danes. They retake the city. So I'm going to put him a little bit higher up, but I don't know his name. I'm pretty sure this is the dude. He's like, he has a good scene where they're like, they're all around a table eating. Is like, how much longer are we going to take their shit? How much longer are we going to let them piss in our face? And then they don't show the fight, but after that they show Danish heads on spikes and shit. And they've retaken the city. So that's actually a cool little moment from this guy. Don't know his name though. Queen Iseult. I'm going to go B. And I'm going to go... here. So, Uhtred and Leofric are kind of off on their own, and they're like, you know what? If Alfred isn't going to take care of this, we're going to have to make our riches our own way. And they go up north to lands that don't have any claim by Wessex, and they sort of become guns for hire, right? Where this king down here, where the hell is he? Where is you? That dude. This guy plays the Dyatlov in Chernobyl, by the way. This guy promises Queen Iseult as payment. Or, wait, am I misremembering that? This guy promises riches, and he offers up Queen Iseult as, like, because she's a seer, right? And he offers her up to guide Uhtred and his men into fighting this guy, the Sword Dane. And it's cool because this is the first instance of, like, the mysticism in the show. She's the first seer. And Uhtred is, taken aback by her beauty. And also the fact that, she has power, but only as long as she's a virgin, right? Very upsetting because she's very pretty. But, yeah, this character is pretty damn solid. This character saves Edward, when he's an infant. uh, saves the king's life, or the future king's life. Um, she's very conflicted throughout because her gift and her ability, she doesn't enjoy it, right? That whole thing where she saves Prince Edward's infant life, knowing that it's going to cost another innocent's life in the exchange, that like really messes with her. And there's this good scene between her and Uhtred where you know she's mourning that loss, and Uhtred has just come back to learn that his infant son is dead. I don't know if he officially makes the connection between those two events, but the show highly indicates that those two things are linked. And he's in mourning, she's in mourning. They have sex, she loses her power, and then not even like an episode later, they have that battle at the end of season 1 or season 2. I can't remember if it's season 1 or I want to say season 2. And just randomly she gets killed by this fucking sword Dane who holds up her head to goad Uhtred into attacking, which he does, by the way. There's like that really cool moment where he does that backflip, or he does a front flip over the shield wall and then starts, slicing people up. Um, yeah, he is just enraged at her death, which I always thought she got a really raw deal. Like a good character that should have been around a little bit longer, I think. And losing her sucked. First see her in the show, a little bit, touching on that mysticism that the show is going to gradually explore more and more. I'd say as far like there is magic in the show, but it's a very limited form of magic. These seers have limited powers that come at a cost, and yeah, like really good character. Uh, Middling B tier, but solid damn character. All right, Kiatin. I'm gonna go C tier. This dude and his son, Sven. Sven attacks Stur when they're very young, and Lord Ragnar's super pissed off about that. Sven loses an eye as a result of that. This guy vows to take revenge, which he does. Um, we see it pretty early on in season 1. Lose him literally on fire. And yeah, bit more conniving and sneaky than most Danes. And Uhtred swears revenge, doesn't get it until season 3. Ragna is the one that lays the multiple blows. This guy has a cool death because he literally gets butchered by young Ragna, Lord Ragna's son. Um, Not as stupid as most Danish lords, but ultimately he thinks his fortress is impregnable. There's no way they can get in, and sure enough, that's not going to work in the long term. Has a cool death. His son is a moron. Doesn't have much else to say about it than that. Within C, better than Guthrum, better than Klappa. Debatable, better than Hild. Yeah, I don't know. We'll leave him there for now. Leofrich. This is S tier. I don't want to hear it. This is S tier. Um, this guy is fucking awesome. This guy reminds me of the Hound from Game of Thrones. Um, Initially one of Uhtred's best allies, because he initially does not like Uhtred, constantly calls him the assling, saying how like he's the one that guides Uhtred through the Saxon politics, which Uhtred doesn't fucking understand. It's all foreign to him. I remember after the first big battle and victory for Wessex, where it's all because of Uhtred's doing, and he literally kills King Abba, right? But because he doesn't go relay the information to Alfred, he doesn't get the credit for the victory. And Leofrich is trying to tell him, no, you gotta go there physically and tell them what happened. Otherwise, they're gonna fuck you over. And Uhtred's like, no, what are you talking about? I did the fighting. Other men will tell the story of my deeds. It'll be fine. He doesn't listen to him, and he fucks up so bad because this is the first big rift. Like he's so pissed off when he finds out that Otto the Younger, who did nothing, took credit for the fucking victory. Yeah, like this guy is solid throughout. He's one of the best swordsmen throughout the show, honestly. And the way we lose him is so fucking like it's heartbreaking. I love the fact that he comes back as a ghost later on the seasons to, give Uhtred advice. But yeah, this is an S tier character. I don't care what anybody says. Like, really good character, reminds me of the Hound, one of my favorite characters in Game of Thrones. Great fighter, gives Uhtred solid advice. Should have listened to him more. Would have been way better off. There's a great moment where what is it? Uhtred makes amends for Wessex once more after Alfred's death, right? And he's giving that speech to then newly crowned king, or not even crowned king, Edward, and he's talking about what Leofric said to him about Alfred. The bastard thinks. One of my favorite lines. One of my favorite lines from him, and just one of the best lines in the show. The bastard thinks. This is a great way to describe Alfred, because he really is, always thinking about all the angles, and doesn't just do things happenstance. Really thinks this shit out. That's getting cold. Ugh. But yeah, Leverage, obvious S tier character for me. Very underrated. I don't know that I'd put him ahead of Father Beorca, even though personally, like in my personal, you know, top character list, he's in top four. He might even be better than fucking Aethelwald, and Aethelwald's a great character. Um, yeah, this dude's awesome. I want to see him in more stuff, honestly. I hope this actor is getting a lot of work because he was damn good. Um, yeah, just initially, Uhtred's right hand man. You know what else is great about this guy? He's one of the few characters that can kick Uhtred's ass. When they were fighting, um, the trial by combat or whatever the hell they called it, um, he's beating Uhtred, and then all of a sudden the Danes attack Lord Guthrum's forces, and it's like, honestly, if things had gone on, I think he would have beat Uhtred one on one. He's one of the few characters in the show that you could make an argument for, potentially even being a better swordsman than him. That's insane. There's a lot of great warriors throughout this fucking show, but yeah, like I can't think of anybody else offhand who realistically would have the advantage over Uhtred. I can think of some others who would have a shot, but would ultimately lose to Uhtred. So yeah, this is that's a pretty big feather in his cap, in my opinion. All right, Mildred. So this one's interesting. Like, Uhtred gets set up in order to have this arranged marriage because her family is broke. They owe a lot of money to the church, and Uhtred doesn't know that when he marries her. And by marrying her, he then takes on all her debts, which pisses him off to no end. But she's a nice person, and very pretty. Does give Uhtred a son who tragically dies. I'm gonna say C tier because of the fact that she's so goddamn religious that there's no way this was ever going to work out. Right? This thing was destined to fail. She harps on Uhtred for killing this moron, who is literally stealing Uhtred's resources to resell them for a profit. You know, she thinks because this guy is nice that Uhtred should, be lenient with him. And Uhtred's like, you know what? I'm sick of your shit. He guts this guy like a fish. And she's like so taken aback by like, how just violent he can be that she just kind of at that point becomes super distant, doesn't want anything to do with him. Even at the point where after they've had the kid, it's not like they can, get divorced or something like that. So yeah, I understand when she gets pissed off when Queen Isolde shows up, and Uhtred shows up with this random Danish woman. And it's like, what the hell is this? Like, so I kind of feel for her in a little bit of a way, but this arranged marriage was never going to work out, honestly. Within C, what do we got? A little bit better than I think that's probably about right, honestly. Lord Otto, as I call him. It's like Otta, or Odda is how you actually spell his name, but it's pronounced like Otto. This is an A tier character. This is a damn good A tier character. Um, this dude is fucking awesome. This is one of the first guys that actually gives Uhtred a fair shake. You know, they come up that Uhtred comes up with that battle plan, in which is eventually going to defeat King Otto, King Abba, King Abba, King Abba, and he actually takes a risk and trusts Uhtred. He's one of the first Saxons to really, really do this when it's really on the line. And you know, after the battle, you know, he's like, "Hey, man, I can trust this guy. He's a good dude." Um, his fucking son, who's a Weasley little toady, like the sacrifice that he has to make for his king in killing his son is probably one of the most impressive, you know, sacrifices in the entire show. And then when Alfred can't do the same with his own child, he just feels totally betrayed by the king. It's honestly one of the best like dynamics in the show because this guy makes the sacrifice. His son is a traitor, deserves to die. He takes, you know, knife in hand, stabs him right in the heart, and, you know, is loyal to his king. When Alfred is, like, distraught because Aethelflaed gets kidnapped, he comes to the king and basically says, listen, we can't pay this ransom. This is literally going to fund the army that's going to destroy, you know, not only our people, but everyone on the continent. It's going to unite, you know, Daneland uh, by wiping out all the other kingdoms, including her own. You can't do this to us. This is a total betrayal. If she has to be sacrificed to avoid that reality, then that's what's going to have to happen. I sacrificed my son because he was a traitor to you. You got to step up and be willing to do the same for her. And he can't do it. And he's just like, what the fuck? And, you know, this is why he leads that army that's going to attack Siegfried and Eric and, you know, force King Alfred's hand. And despite the fact that he's one of the most loyal guys to Alfred throughout the entire show, he has a horrible death because he dies in a jail cell. It's just, it sucks, man. This guy deserved way, way better than he got. Just way, way better. He's a good character throughout. His death always bothered me. It still fucking bothers me, honestly. And yeah, this is a good fucking dude. I like this guy a lot. Lord Otto. Okay, next up, the son. Lord Scum. Otto the Younger. He's a C tier character. He's a toady throughout. He's constantly shitting on Uhtred. He takes credit for Uhtred's victory against King Otto. King Abba. What the fuck am I doing? King Abba. And just a Weasley little shit. He does like a little bit of fighting. Like a little bit. But, you know, toady throughout. He gets more screen time than some of these others. So I'll put him up here, and I do like his death. Like, the best thing I can say about this character is I like his death. Because his death has so much more meaning, because it comes from his father, than anything he did in his entire life. Like, honestly. So, middling C tier, and this is being nice to him, even though I shouldn't be. He probably could do with a few further spots to the right, honestly. I feel like I'm losing my voice. Ooh. Hour and a half. Osferth. Excellent character. But B tier. This is what's his name, who now I can't fucking remember, even though he plays Aemon Targaryen. Or Daemon Targaryen. No, not Daemon. Aemond. Like, I think this is one of his earliest acting roles, right? And he did a really good job. You know, the bastard son of Alfred, cousin of Leofrich? Yeah, Osferth. I don't know if I messed up his name. I can't remember the fucking actor's name, even though he's really fucking good. Uh, yeah, his whole thing, you know, bastard son of the king, never gets acknowledged. I don't think there's even a scene between him and the son. There is a scene between him and, you know, his technically brother, his half brother. Um, Never is really bothered by the fact that he's a bastard. Kind of jokes about it throughout the course of the show. You know, initially unproven warrior, but you know he's from Leofrich, so he eventually gets really good. Gets taught by Uhtred, and you know becomes a pretty damn competent swordsman. Has one of the most tragic deaths in the show. Honestly, uh, Finan is stuck in a really hard spot because his wife is being attacked. He's kind of torn between you know helping her or helping Osferth, who's you know 2-on-1ing what's his name, Lord Aethelhelm's fucking hired goon and some rando, and because of the 2-on-1 and the conflict, he can't rush to his aid. So you know he gets stabbed. He dies, and it's like fucking brutal. Again, one of the few times I cried in the show, but he's bleeding out, you know, screaming, "I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die," and it's fucking tragic as hell. Good character, solid. Again, he comes in toward a kind of towards the end where you know initially anytime anybody teams up with Uhtred, you can kind of just count the episodes before they're going to die. Once he gets with Finan and Sihtric, you know things are much more stable for the boys. He's the last death of you know Uhtred's allies or close allies that you know team up with him and constantly fight along his side. So yeah, tragic death. Cried. Can't remember the actor's name, even though he's fucking great in House of the Dragon. But yeah. All right. No name. This character tries to rob Uhtred and tries to pull a fast one over him, and you know gets what's coming to him. Not a lot to say about this idiot. Uh, he dies early in season 1 or season 2. I don't know. It's right after Uhtred gets married to Mildrith that this idiot gets what's coming to him. Another no name. So the actor plays Dyatlov in Chernobyl. This king, Uhtred and Leofrich go up north. They're looking to, you know, get rich quick. They end up becoming like sellswords to this guy, who's like, "Hey, we got some trouble with these raiders up north, the Sword Dane, who they get hired and you know get promised you know half of all their silver or whatever they have, um, and then he gives Queen Assault to them as like a advisor, and yeah, he meets with a you know pretty quick end because once Leofrich and Uhtred figure out that they're fighting Danes, he conveniently left that little detail out of it. Um, Leofrich and Uhtred team up with this guy. They're like, hey, instead of you know, because this guy has way more men than they initially think, and they know how to fight. Like it's a battle they're probably not going to win. This guy offers to instead team up with him, and this guy gets it. You know, very quickly. He's doing his classic yell. This actor is always angry, or at least he's just in a lot of angry roles, I think. But yeah, he gets killed. Not a lot to say about him. He's some king. Don't know his name. Father Pulik, definitely an A tier character. Um, I'm gonna go here. So sometimes I have a little bit of a debate with myself between do I like Father Pulik more or do I like Father Beorka? It's really tough. I like both of these priests. This one is more of a warrior. You know, he was a Briton and actually was a soldier before becoming a priest. He has one of the coolest intros when he's fighting off against this douchebag. And, you know, feigning weakness, like saying, "Oh, is this how you hold it, etc." You know, like just really cool setup because he kills this fool like easily and then mocks the brothers, Siegfried and Eric. And then throughout the course of the show, he's like a solid advisor to King Alfred, King Edward, Uhtred, and like probably one of his best scenes in my opinion is when you know Uhtred's having that crisis of identity. He's trying to figure out a way to, you know, serving Wessex has come at the cost of his family. It's happened, multiple times, and he's at a point where he can't ask his family to bear anymore. And, Father Pulik says that, maybe there's a way that you can serve two masters at the same time. Because maybe there's one master. That's like probably one of his best quotes in the show. And he kind of guides throughout. He kind of guides Uhtred throughout this crisis that he's having. To maybe it doesn't have to be one or the other. Maybe you can do both at the same time. And then Uhtred thinks on it a little bit more and realizes, hey, maybe it is my destiny to see that Alfred's dream of this united England gets fulfilled. And in doing so, that leads into, Uhtred becoming Lord of Bebbanburg once again. That's a home place for, his family to be protected and safe, which is really what he wants, really why he's, doing all of this. So he's just a great advisor throughout the entire show to a bunch of different people. And yeah, honestly, I'm sometimes in conflict with whether I like him more than Father Beorka. And it's really tough at times because it's close. Now, I think overall, Father Beorka is an S tier character and he's an A tier character because Father Beorka just does so much more. And he has such a closer relationship, conflicted relationship with Uhtred. Father Beorka gets there, but it's towards, like, the end. Plus, he doesn't show up until, season 3. So he doesn't have near as much screen time as Father Beorka. Alright. Ragnar the Elder. Ragnar. A tier. Again, one of these characters that's... He doesn't get a lot of screen time. He's only alive for 2 or 3 episodes, if that. But he had a very long-lasting impact because of his children, because of, him raising Uhtred. Has the coolest death in the show, honestly, where, he's literally on fire. He's just killed his father and his wife to prevent them from, suffering a horrible death. They both die with weapons in their hands. And then he armors up. He runs out through the burning, building and starts swinging his sword despite the fact that, at that point, he himself is lit on fire. So, really cool character. Has a clever battle victory first episode. And, yeah, like, kills Uhtred's dad, becomes his dad. Really cool character. Definite A tier, would be higher in my opinion, but just doesn't have the screen time that the other characters have. So yeah, I'm going to leave him where he is. Ragnar the Younger. Ooh, this is either an A or a B. I'm going to go A, and I think he's a little bit better than his dad. So, he has that great moment where he avenges his father by killing Kiatin. Butchers the shit out of him, right? And, has, like, the first, like, really solid fortified position for, the Danes, and they're somewhat living peacefully with the Christians for the first time in the show, after he takes over that keep. It doesn't last forever, because, he eventually gets goaded into, going on this great march, to take out Wessex, to unify. And, he kind of wants to become the next Abba, the next king of the Danes. And initially everything's going right for him, but, it leads to that really tragic moment where he asks Uhtred to swear his sword to him, and he can't do it because he's already sworn to Wessex and Alfred. And they have that falling out. And yeah, it's honestly a bummer because after that, these two can't look out for one another anymore after that, and that's what leaves the opening that eventually, has Aethelwald and Canute come in and be his undoing. He has a horrible death. He doesn't die with a sword in his hand, and then they have to, go about freeing his spirit because he's He didn't die with a sword in his hand, so he can't go to Valhalla. He's in purgatory. I forget what the hell they call it. Um, yeah, it sucks because he didn't deserve that. And honestly, if he had just learned to accept and stay in his keep, he would have been fine. He and Brita were happy together, and yeah, it sucks. But at least Uhtred saves his avenges his death, and kills the person responsible, uses his blood on the blade, and this frees his spirit so he can actually rest peacefully. But yeah, it sucks what happened to him. Honestly, he deserved better. This guy, Rudger Hauer, this character is named Ravn, Ravn. He is a very, very minor character. One or two episodes, if that. This is Lord Ragnar's father, I'm pretty sure. He's blind. He initially, once Uhtred gets captured as a kid, they're all like in the feasting hall, and Uhtred is just like scared for his life, right? This guy asks him what's going on, and he says, these different people show up throughout the room, and Uhtred describes them to him and says, that's King Abba, that's Guthrum, that's Lord Ragnar, etc. And he sort of guides him on the politics of what's happening around them, right? He's very cold to Uhtred, but at the same time, he also gives him food and ale, gets something in his stomach. He doesn't last very long. Again, one or two episodes, he dies when Lord Ragnar dies. Pretty sure Lord Ragnar kills him and his wife in order to, spare them from suffering. They both died with weapons in their hand. He's way too small to be, much better than dead. I feel bad putting him in the dead category, but at the same time, he's dead. Rudger Hauer is great, but I really wish they had given him a role that let him stick around a little bit longer. It would have been cool if he was an advisor to King Abba instead of Lord Ragnar's father, which I'm pretty sure he was. Or he was just some old guy that they all respected so much that they, kept him around despite the fact that he was blind. Some, in his younger days, very formidable warrior, but, he's entering, the twilight years and lost his eyesight, so he just kind of gives, political advice. And not for very long, because he doesn't last that long. I don't even know who the hell this is. I genuinely don't know who that is. He's a Dane. Yeah, I can't think or place this dude. If this guy had a scene, it was probably in early season 1, and then he didn't have any scenes later on. So, I have no idea who the fuck that is. I don't know this dude's name. This guy was like a spy for Aethelred. You know what? We don't have anything in the excrement category. Let's put him here. I don't know his fucking name. He spies for Aethelred. Where the hell are you? There he is. And yeah, he doesn't, give Aethelred satisfying answers. He's supposed to scare Aethelflaed, I believe, or kill her, but he fails to do it, or something like that. And so Aethelred literally puts a sword right through his belly, and then Aldhelm has to bury the body so people don't ask questions. Yeah, this is nothing more than the end result of Aethelred's failed scheming when we're first introduced to him. Yeah, he's worthless. Siegfried. Couldn't think of his name right away. One of the brothers, Siegfried and Eric. Cool character, responsible for the sacking of London. I'm going to go... His brother is up in A tier. I think he's going to be in B tier. Very much your stereotypical Dane, just wants to raid and sack villages, wants to conquer, comes up with a good plan, loses a hand, has that axe attachment, which is kind of cool. Was it an axe or was it a hook? Was it a sword? I can't remember. I think it was a sword. But yeah, he tragically kills his brother when he finds out that the brother has fallen in love with Aethelflaed, and the two of them are trying to run off. This is going to destroy their entire plan, sow division within their big major army. I honestly think that that army that these two built together was the largest in the entire show because it fucking took London. And like, yeah, they did a lot together, but the breakdown of their relationship is what ultimately destroys the two of them. And he kills his brother, and then not 15 minutes later dies in battle. This guy almost killed Aethelred for us, but he sees Aethelflaed and just guns right for her. When he was fighting Aethelred, I was rooting for him. But as soon as he turned on, his attention to her, that's when Uhtred starts, gunning for him, and I believe it was her that actually ends up killing him. Gets a little bit of revenge for, the death of Eric. But yeah, good character. Within B, higher than them, higher. I'm gonna go here. Um, yeah, I think maybe maybe within these two, there might be a little bit of room to maneuver here, but I think he's definitely one of the higher B category characters for sure. Um, yeah, responsible for a lot, but tragic death because of what happened with his brother. Uh, Bloodhair. This is a dead. I'm gonna rank him higher than him. So this whole storyline was Skade, and this idea of prophecy, and them foreseeing Alfred's death, and then having that not happen at all the way they said it would happen. Um, this guy just gets played. He gets played by Skade. He gets played by the alliance of Ragnar the Younger, Heston, uh, the other Danes, and his haggard, meager forces that he managed to hold on to after he was defeated by Alfred and Mercia together. So yeah, like this guy just got played throughout most of his existence. You know, he had that whole thing where he was bound to Skade to her will, and just made stupid decisions. Was a warrior, dies against fucking Heston of all people because he gets betrayed by Skade. She works that voodoo on him, and he suddenly, even though he's winning the fight because it's against fucking Heston, um, yeah, he can't keep it together, and he just gets played throughout most of the entire show. So I'm just gonna put him in the dead category. Citric. This is definitely a B. Um, Again, at this point, when someone teams up with the Uhtred, they're pretty much here to stay. I'm gonna put him with the rest of the boys. I don't think he's better than Finan. He's better than Osferth because he's a better fighter and he actually lives. But yeah, I think this makes a lot of poetic sense right here to have the boys all lined up. The three here. Yeah, that's a solid one. Uh, if Finan is Uhtred's right hand, this dude is his left hand, honestly. And yeah, consistently good guy throughout. We get him when we get Finan. Doesn't have as many lines as Finan. Doesn't have Finan is Uhtred's emotional support. Loyal, just one of the boys, honestly. Good guy. Skade. I'm gonna put this in excrement. um, this character is poisoned from the jump. Most interesting thing about her is the fact that she's a seer, and unlike with Queen Iseult, she very much embraces the darker side of being a seer. Her entire idea is to control a great warrior that she can manipulate to allow her to bring about her reign of death and destruction on this continent, and it's just like you can tell she's foul from the get go. She's beautiful, so many men are enamored by her, but um yeah, honestly, the best thing that I can say about her is the fact that she flits from one prospect to the next. First, it's Damphair. He fails her. It's like fuck you, and then it's Uhtred, or no, then it's fucking Heston. Then it's Heston of all people. Even though she doesn't really want to be with him, it's like, well, hey, I'm here. And there's that moment in the battle between Uhtred and Heston's men where she's just rooting for bloodshed. She doesn't even give a fuck who wins. And it's like if he had won that fight somehow, she would have been with him. So yeah, after he loses, she gets back with Uhtred, and then at that point, Uhtred and Brita have learned how to break the curse that Uhtred has been, infected by. You have to kill the person that spoke the curse without letting them speak a word or breaking the skin. They can't bleed. So when Brita kills Story, I think I'm losing my fucking voice. When Brita kills Story, she strangles him to death. He can't speak. The skin doesn't break. There's no drops of blood or anything like that. When Uhtred kills her, they're in the lake or whatever, like skinny dipping, and they start making out, and Uhtred takes a shirt or something, wraps it around, her face, dunks her head underwater, and just holds her there until she passes away. Uh, Probably the best moment for her, honestly, is when she gets killed. I did not like the character. I didn't really like the storyline all that much, and I was, very happy to see her go. The Sword Dane. I don't know his name. Not a ton to say about this dude. I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with Dead. This guy pops up one time, you know, uh, when Uhtred and Leofric are working for this dude. Uh, he convinces the two of them to switch sides. He kills this guy. After that, he betrays Uhtred and Leofric and the rest of his men. He shows back up at the battle at the end of season 1, and he kills he kills Queen Assault. Where the hell is she? Right there. Literally throws her head in Uhtred's direction, causes him to be enraged. Uhtred eventually kills this douchebag. Not a ton to say. Yeah, Dead. Do I like him better than? I think he's right where he needs to be, honestly. Stiapa. This is like the replacement enforcer guy after we lost Leofric. Um, he's a solid character. It just kind of seems like he was shoehorned in because he feels very much like the Leofric after Leofric, if you understand what I'm saying. You know, like the big dude, really strong. I think he's like his official title is like Man at Arms. He trains a bunch of people. He trains King Edward. He trains Alfred, I think. And yeah, honestly, like good guy overall. It's just I think they were almost like regretting having killed off Leofric in season 1, and then they just sort of brought back like a diet Leofric. Like that's kind of mean because this is a good guy. The actor did a good job. It's just man, like I'm gonna go B tier, but I'm gonna go lower B tier. I think this is about right for him. He dies fighting alongside King Edward. You know, News of his death hurts him, and it also hurts Aethelflaed. So yeah, he had an impact a little bit, in the relationship with the royals, but you know, it sucks because he's a good guy, but I can't say a lot more for him, and I really feel like a little bit like it's just the show trying to make up for the fact that Leofric is not in the show anymore. Like he feels like that kind of character, And because it's not Leofrich, it just feels lesser. So yeah, I got to go low B tier. Story. I'm gonna go C tier. He's a better seer than Skade. He's a worse seer than Queen Assault for damn sure. He gets a branch stuck up his ass by Brita, and then he gets choked to death by Brita, who he puts a curse on her, right? After she sticks the branch up his ass. He's an advisor to King Abba. Um, after King Abba's death, he sort of becomes like a wandering fortune teller, like he's that reduced, and that's how Uhtred and Brita find him. As he's roaming around, telling fortunes to people, giving advice, and they go to him initially because Brita says they need to figure out how to break a curse. Here's the thing: is she already knows how, and she just wants to, you know, find him so she can be the one to kill him because he curses her, and this is what leads to her miscarriage. You know, Uhtred and Brita were going to have a son, I believe, but they lose it because of what this dude does. So yeah, a little bit more impactful than Skade, who definitely has power, but uh, it's inconsistent with her. Queen Assault demonstrates the most seer power in the show. Everything she says and does works out, and she only dies because she doesn't want her power anymore. You know that's why she decides to sleep with Uhtred. Um, yeah, 3 seers in the show. Yeah, not a ton to say about him. Sven. Sven is foul. Um, this guy attacks Tura when she's like a little girl. They're kids. Loses an eye from Lord Ragnar. Um, he is easily manipulated and fearful. He's scared of her because she has dogs. It's like, what are you doing, dude? You have this person prisoner. You've raped her so many times, and you're afraid of her. And he dies stupidly, literally ripped apart by dogs. Honestly, best thing about this character is how he gets killed. He gets eaten. He gets eaten apart by dogs, um, because he's fearful. He's unsure of himself, and yeah, like uh, foul, foul for sure. Uh, don't know this dude's name. This is the dude that's the slaver that imprisons Uhtred, Finan, and Halig. Season 3, beginning of season 3. They eventually escape. This dude literally gets killed because Finan puts his sword through his neck, right? And then, as like a final act of, spite, gets right in his face and says, pull, and, rips the sword out, killing him. This guy made them row almost to death, you know, just like brutalizing them throughout, especially after they escaped or tried to escape and failed. Um, this guy, hands down, like one of the coolest deaths for such a minor character, just because of that moment. Like I said, Finan sticks his blade right through the dude's throat and then yells right in his face, pulling it out and killing him. Like that was the best thing you can say about this guy is how he dies, and I don't even remember his name because it doesn't matter. Tura. I'm gonna go B tier with Tura. Honestly, most innocent character for the most tragic death. You know, her life is miserable through most of it. She gets rescued by Uhtred and Ragnar the Younger. Uh, Father Bjorka comforts her. The two develop a relationship and sort of fall in love. And then they have a happy life together. She tries to live alongside the Christians. She's a nice person. She doesn't bother anybody. That's not good enough. You know, Constant harassment. It escalates to threats and then finally physical violence. Oh, wait a minute. No, never mind. I was thinking something else. Um, I thought for a second that this dude was the guy that came to her home and attacked her. She has she definitely has the most tragic death in the show. You know, Aethelwald is stoking division and fears that there's going to be a war between the Saxons and the Danes, So then, all the Christians start ganging up on, anyone that's an outsider. She's an easy target. She's right around the corner. And, sure enough, um, she defends herself, stabs that guy who's sent there to kill her. But, when he can't find her, he starts lighting her place on fire. She's underneath the floorboards. She, like carved out a little dirt patch or whatever. Um, she kills that dude, but then he falls, collapses on top of the little escape hatch, the wooden floor, and she can't get out after that, and then she burns to death. It's this character deserves so much better, and just got put through so much shit. Raped by Sven for years and years, lived a horrible life, finally gets free, has a little bit of happiness. It gets taken away, and she has the worst death in the show. That was hard to watch, honestly. Within B, what do we got? Oh, fuck Ethelred for sure. Better than Stiappa? Hmm. I don't. Like a middling B. Uh, I don't. I kind of just like Queen Assault a little bit more as a character. This character is like super depressing. I know, I'm like that's mean as fuck, but it's kind of. I mean, it is what it is, honestly. She does a good job. I really liked when her and Father Bjorka got married, but then it only just led to tragedy, and her passing really scarred him and made him just want to like get the fuck out of Dodge. I don't want to be around these people anymore. Like he didn't abandon his faith or anything like that, but at the same time, he's just disgusted with his own people after he loses her, especially the way that he had to lose her. All right, we got two left, and I'm fucking getting hoarse. King Abba, the only Danish king, or the closest thing to a Danish king. This is a B character. I liked him a lot. Um, I liked how cruel he was to the Christians. Honestly, he made torturing them amusing. So honestly, I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna go with here. I think he's middling of the Bs. So like a very straightforward Dane, but he has a cool death. He 1v1s Uhtred. Um, gets a little bit manipulated by Uhtred's tactics. Uh, he kind of goats him into what the fuck was it? A couple of defeats, and it's a real setback for him. He's determined to defeat the Jesus Christ, I'm like losing it. He's determined to defeat the Saxons in open field, right? He goes to his advisor Sturri, and he's really at a point where he just wants to hit something, and Uhtred infiltrates and challenges him to 1v1. They have a really good fight, but ultimately, gets defeated by Uhtred. Uhtred lets him grab his axe or his sword in the moment, so he actually gets to go to Valhalla. And not a ton to say about this. I'm trying to think of because this was in like season 2. He's at a point in the show where after he's defeated, he actually makes one more technical appearance where his grave, where he gets buried at that site, gets desecrated by Christians, and Uhtred is actually really pissed off about it because he says in that moment, Abba is the closest thing to a king that the Danes will ever have, and it's true. Nothing comes closer. Out of all these Danes that pop up throughout and try to become the Lord of the Danes or the king, he's the closest one that ever comes to having a unified Danish kingdom or force. All right, I'm losing my voice. This is Wolfir. Wolfir, something like that. This guy was an advisor to, or like man at arms to Alfred. He betrays them, and he ends up siding with the Danes on the first major battle in season one. He's a total scumbag. Leofric kills his ass, and yeah, not a ton else to say about it. Also, need to cut this short because I'm losing my fucking voice. I do not normally talk this much. This is like 2 hours for me. That's a lot. But yeah, that was my first attempt at live stream. Hopefully this went pretty well. I felt like for the most part I had a lot to say. There's a ton about this show that's worth talking about. So yeah, having gone through all this now, I think this is a pretty damn good list. And the title, the definitive, the Last Kingdom character tier ranking list, I think it's worthy of it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got. So as always, thanks for watching and peace. Oh, I forgot to fucking post that. Jesus. Um,